Hello and welcome to Insecurity. I am Matt Stevenson, and as always, I am super excited about today's guest. We are going to talk about a lot of different things, but there's one question that I really want to get into, and I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make. So, that being said, the topic, the title for today, it's not just cybersecurity, it's information security. As always, we like to start with a little bit of culture, a little bit of interesting things. So I offer you this from Stéphane Napo. He is the CISO of Société Générale. They are a massive financial institution located in Paris, but with arms all over the world. And Stéphane offered us this. One of the main cyber risks is to think they don't exist. The other is to try to treat all potential risks. Fix the basics, protect first what matters for your business, and be ready to react properly to pertinent threats. Think data, but also business services, integrity, awareness, customer experience, compliance, and reputation. And if we want to go to the flip side of that, something that maybe's got a little more cultural to it, how about this? And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. That, of course, is David Bowie from the legendary 1971 album Hunky Dory. Let's give you some stats just to give you a little more context of what we're talking about. According to the 2018 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, an incident is defined as a security event that compromises the integrity, confidentiality, or availability of an information asset, whereas a breach is an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just potential exposure, of data to an unauthorized party. So furthermore information from the DBIR, over 50% of breaches in 2017 were caused by social manipulation, human error, or privilege misuse. Now think about that, because as an industry, we are spending exponentially more and more on cybersecurity than we ever have before. Our friends at Cybersecurity Ventures report that in 2017, the federal budget had $19 billion allocated to cybersecurity, up from $14 billion in 2016. That's nearly a 20% increase in a year. Microsoft claims they will invest over $1 billion a year in security. JP Morgan Chase doubled their budget in 2017 to $500 million. And not to be one-upped, Bank of America has stated it has an unlimited budget for battling cybercrime. So all this money, all this activity, all this stuff in play, we still see breaches and attacks reported so frequently that it's practically become white noise. So seeing the money that's being spent and the number of successful breaches reported by groups like Verizon, are we maybe overthinking things a bit? And it's in that vein that we bring in someone who I think as a part of his entire process, his career, is boiling things down and just getting jobs done. We'd like to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Pete Schiefelbein of the United States Marine Corps. Now, Pete, Colonel, I want to make sure that I'm doing this all with the proper respect and also kudos for the work that you have done. You have recently separated from the Marines after 24 years. What is the proper way to refer to you so that we're doing it right?
Matt, please call me Pete. Typically, yeah, I mean, folks are addressed by their rank, and that's appropriate. But no, I mean, I retired at the end of 2017. I had an outstanding 24 years, 24 plus in the Marine Corps. Amazing experiences, and most of all, just made some great friendships and got to work with some amazing people over the years. Very proud of my service, but these days I go by Pete.
Pete it shall be, but let's not gloss over what's happened over the last 24 plus years. You are currently an advisory board member for the Cybersecurity Forum Initiative, as well as being a systems engineer at Computer Systems Center Incorporated, also known as CSCI. Prior to that, as we mentioned, 24 years in the Marine Corps, a BS in mechanical engineering from the Naval Academy, a master's in electrical and electronics engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School. Some interesting posts throughout your career, but probably most germane to what we're talking about today. You were the Director of Information Technology at the United States Marine Corps Training and Educational Command. And there you were running an enterprise of over 20,000 user workstations in 50 locations around the country, including Hawaii. So logistically, not that easy to handle, and running a team of over 40. Oh, and also, if that's not quite impressive enough, you are an Eagle Scout, and to show how good you are at the things you do, your son, also an Eagle Scout. Welcome to Insecurity. I think that might be the coolest CV I've announced on anybody who's been in the show in 53 episodes.
Wow. Well, thank you, Matt. It just kind of, you can't plan it out in advance. I've been blessed to be all the places I've been, and again to work for and with all the people that I did over the years. Came away with a lot, some certainly great opportunities, education wise, skill set and all that. But yeah, it's really been an interesting ride. And of course, yes, super proud of my son, our oldest. He's an Eagle Scout now and finishing up high school here this year, and he's got a bright future ahead of him. And scouting certainly has been a big part of that.
For the sake of all of us, I hope the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because if we get another one of you, the fact that you said you can't plan it out, if somebody laid that out saying those are my goals in life, I think someone would probably tell them, dial it back a little bit, man. Give yourself a chance to take a breath. Before we start digging deep into all of this stuff, though, tell us about CSFI. Now, that's a very interesting organization doing you're working with a really impressive list of DoD groups and government agencies, but also some massive global commercial businesses. What are you guys doing over there?
Cybersecurity Forum Initiative, CSFI, nonprofit organization here that does, I'm going to say two main things. We're a social network of, we're getting close to 100,000 members. We've got a LinkedIn group that anyone can sign up for. Just look us up on LinkedIn, CSFI, and that'll get you onto the mailing list. And I promise we don't spam folks too much. No, it's not spam. You'll get notifications of events coming up relating to cybersecurity and the cyber career field. You learn about current events going on relating to cyber threats or vulnerabilities out there and mitigations as well. And it just keeps people kind of in the loop on what's going on. Again, in the DoD government and industry kind of intersect. That's maybe where CSFI's target audience is. But no, so that's the first thrust is our social media network. And then secondly, we do provide training that is squarely focused on the warfighter. As a complement to things like CISSP, Security Plus, some of the other industry certifications out there, we offer courses that are tailored to warfighters who are going to go out there and run network operations centers, conduct cybersecurity operations in a tactical warfighting environment. So what we do is we take the military planning process and overlay that onto cybersecurity concepts, so that soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines that go out there and are actually operating a network have knowledge of how to integrate what the skill set that they bring into the military operation in the overall sense, so that a commander doesn't go out there with say everything that he needs to prosecute a kinetic battle, but has blind spots or is weak in the cyber realm. The courses, and the first one is called Intro to Cyber Operations, Warfare and Defense. The IQUAD course, of course, is the first step into that realm where we give the warfighter that skill set to bring cyber into the military planning process. To answer your question again, I'll back out of that because I got a little long-winded on that. But so with those two thrusts, our social network and our warfighter-focused training, overall we're advocates for increased awareness and ability, skill sets in the cybersecurity realm, not just the warfighter, not just the military audience, but government as a whole. We do engage with industry quite a bit. I would say more in a sense of how can industry partner with the public sector in order to strengthen America and strengthen America's defense in the cyber domain.
This is going to be so much fun because I feel like every answer you're going to give is going to cue me up for the next question in the most natural order. And that's right the direction that I wanted to go. What are private businesses looking to military affiliated groups like CSFI? What kind of guidance are they coming to you for? Because I would think that these are our best and the brightest. These are people that are leading the charge for pick your slogan of choice, whether it's leading democracy, but I mean, these are the elite people we have in the world doing what they do, not only for that job, but they're doing it oftentimes in combat situations. And with all due respect to our network admin friends out there in the world, you've never done it under heavy mortar fire before. So with a group like CSFI, when you go in to talk to a large financial institution or working with large universities, that sort of thing, what are you bringing to the party that's different than other consulting groups who may have equally esteemed people just a different type of CV?
I think it's really what you just mentioned a moment ago, and that's doing under heavy fire. There is just a very different approach that has to be taken, both when you need to execute your operations, when you need to support and defend a network under fire and on the move. A quick example would be cellular service. Today the average American citizen takes cell phone service for granted, and that's because there's a network of cell towers that are at fixed locations on very high towers that don't move, and the power is pretty much assured there as well. That is not the case in any kind of dynamic military environment. That battle space, and therefore all the comm assets are going to need to move at the same time. So there are huge challenges with a moving cell tower on the battlefield if you want to try and use your cell phone. We bring that sense of what does it take to support military operations. Again, it's kind of a very both defensive yet at the same time aggressive posture to go out and at the end of the day support military operations. So I mean the whole point of a network, of a communication network in military operations is to support command and control. It's not pick your big name provider out there in industry. They just want to at the end of the day they're trying to sell units and make money, and that's their motivation. That's how they survive. For a military any military unit, they're trying to execute a mission, and doing that mission means that they've got to be able to move troops and move equipment and ammunition on the battlefield, put ordnance on target. Everything else is secondary. Everything else is a supporting effort to that, including the comm network.
And I want to make sure this is not shameless plugs. This is really important information that everyone should check out. The website is csfi.us, and you can find them on Twitter at CSFI_DCOE. Really, really interesting stuff that's going on here. If you come from a purely civilian background, how can we get involved with what's happening at CSFI?
Just follow those links that you just named off, and thank you, Matt, for doing that, because I forgotten to do that myself. But yes, csfi.us, and I think you can link to our Twitter account from there, or to our Twitter handle from there. But in any case, and I mentioned LinkedIn as well. You can look us up on LinkedIn and find how to. I think you just request access to the group, and then you get granted access, and then you'll be on the mailing list, and you'll find out about our events. Admittedly, a lot of those are kind of DC area centric, but we do also have a second headquarters out in Nebraska, and we do also track other things that are going on, events going on around the country. And I'll also mention another thing, another strength of CSFI is we are building and maintaining and growing international partnerships as well. So we kind of see ourselves, my words here, but kind of as an adjunct to the Joint Staff and the combatant commands around the world in helping partner nations to strengthen their cybersecurity efforts in their military and in other places as well.
You're talking about training, and it's something that is really interesting to me, because when I was saying how you need to be able to do this, do your network admin style job, but also doing it under fire. It's not always under fire, but you mentioned something that I don't think many people consider about military cyber operations is that you've got to do it mobile. Regardless of where you're posted in the world, you don't always have the luxury of being in a permanent base where there are poles that are sunk into concrete and there are real life foundations. You may be doing this in wet locations and desert locations in the mountains. How different is it running an enterprise in a military setting compared to a similar size enterprise in the private sector?
It's different in the sense that military folks, military units, the military, of course, is organized as a hierarchy based on a chain of command. And, that's one of the first things any recruit or new officer learns is what's your chain of command and who's in it, and who's at the bottom, who's at the top, and every rung in between. So as we do network operations on the military side, those network operations centers understand where they fall in the hierarchy, and they know who they're reporting to, and who's reporting into them. They have a pretty good situational awareness and understanding of the importance of that command and control and keeping those information flows going. And not to say that other private sector enterprises don't have that same hierarchy or same layout. But I think it's easy to lose sight of that. It's easy to get that confused. And I'll say, even in the military, there were challenges with that, particularly in the network operations and cybersecurity side, because we're still new at this, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity and the things that have to be the actions that need to be taken on the network. Okay, there's one command that might direct that, but then there's another command that actually has to execute that. And so kind of working out those lines on the wire diagram on the organization chart is a lot of times easier said than done. So I think, the military has an advantage there because we're kind of used to operating in that construct. But it's never easy.
Never easy. Yes. Okay. Put that on the poll. That's definitely, I think, the biggest understatement so far of what we've heard. So let me ask you this. You've been out in the private sector now for coming up on 2 years after a long career, and you have run very large organizations, multiple locations, including one that's difficult to reach. Do you see any type of noticeable differences or similarities when you're working with your user? Like, how can you compare and contrast what you're seeing now in the private sector compared to the Marines that you've worked with over the past several years?
I think I can cite both advantages and disadvantages, maybe on both sides, but particularly on the Marine side because I came from a lot of years over there. But on the one hand, Marines, I think stereotypically, are known for following orders. And when we're told to do something, when you ask a Marine to do something, they get it done. And it's really no different with how we set up and support and defend our networks. We have a very well codified set of instructions and standard operating procedures for how we do things, and Marines follow that. Even when it gets very detailed technically, we make sure that the right Marines are in place to take care of those actions and get that stuff done. So I would submit that in my years as a Marine, I always felt like the Marine Corps had very well defended networks because of that, just kind of inclination to not just comply, but to do it for the right reasons. And conversely, I'll say that toward the end of my career, I remember seeing a kind of I'm not sure exactly what it was. I want to say it was a draft policy with kind of some thoughts behind it from some senior leaders saying, what do we need to consider here in terms of our policies with personal cell phones. A lot of higher ranking folks in the military tend to have, some kind of mobile device that's connected to the government network that allows them to keep doing work at home or on the road after hours. But then, almost every service member, just like almost every American, has their own mobile device, their own cell phone. And the question was, okay, when we have Marines who are out doing maintenance on aircraft on the flight line, they probably ought to not have their cell phone with them so that there's no distractions there when they're turning the wrench that has a critical piece that if that fails, that aircraft's going to go down. So safety of flight types of situations. But let's think about what is our policy. Do we allow Marines to have cell phones there, or do we not? Same thing really just even goes in a kind of a day-to-day work environment. How much productivity is lost by folks, kind of scrolling through their email on their cell phone versus kind of putting it away and getting down to the task at hand. So kind of two sides of the same coin there as far as the Marine Corps goes. And, in the private sector, I would say I think, like you mentioned at the outset, every business is understanding now that cybersecurity is a matter of, I'll say, life and death for an organization. It's certainly a money-making organization. There is too much at stake now for any organization if their user database or their customer database is compromised, or any critical business information, financial information or otherwise, is taken or otherwise breached. That's a loser. And so we've seen where now it's not the chief information security officer or the chief information officer. It is now the chief executive officer who's being taken to task and sometimes asked to resign or forced out because of cybersecurity vulnerabilities and breaches. So it's everybody's game now, or rather everybody needs to take it seriously, and the consequences are really life-threatening for an organization.
So much to unpack. I have the questions that I wrote down ahead of time, and now I have, I think, twice as many just from that single answer. The cell phone thing, another one that I had not even thought about. In your time serving in the Corps, you have gone from, I mean, it was prior to even cell phone being a luxury. It was purely for doctors, I think, when you went in. And now it's come to the point where you don't want people that are on shift or serving to have them in their pockets because they might stop and scroll through their Instagram accounts. I'm thinking about stray Bluetooth or Wi-Fi signals, but no, it just might be the guy that wants to real quick say, hey, what's going on in the world? When you look at that, and if factually this is inaccurate, forgive me, but I think that President Obama was the first to come into the office with an existing cell phone. I know that
Yes, I remember some of that press. Yeah,
it went mobile with the Bush administration. We actually had, as a guest, we had the CTO of the Bush White House, Teresa Payton. She's amazing. Check her out, by the way, at Payton Tracker on Twitter. But now, when you look at not just the Corps, at all branches, you have people that are coming in with, they've had a cell phone since they were 8 years old, which means they've had a cell phone number. What is that as far as risk is concerned when they get deployed? One thing that comes to my mind specifically was is it Strava, the fitness app?
I think so.
And that was one where they inadvertently were giving away secret locations of training facilities. How do you manage that as an IT director, knowing you've got 20,000 plus users under your umbrella? What do you do?
Well, you made me think of, and this was a number of years ago, but one of my deployments to combat, the commanding officer just said flat out, no Marine will have it. And, he said, if anybody finds a cell phone, they're going to come and see me. And it was put out in no uncertain terms. You will not have one in theater. Yeah, great question. And okay, going to a place like Iraq or Afghanistan, maybe a little less of a threat because they don't have, certainly Afghanistan didn't have a robust commercial infrastructure there. But then you talk about exercises or smaller kind of maybe relief efforts where, okay, maybe that area was hit by a disaster, but there still is infrastructure functioning and available to, like you're saying, to triangulate a position or otherwise identify an individual. It really comes back down to discipline. And you tell your Marines, you tell your troops, hey, this is not allowed. We're not doing this, and here's why. And then you trust them. And then those that can't follow the rules, they suffer the consequences. But it's certainly not a fail safe, but that's the way we have to make it work.
Well, that's a much different conversation when the commanding officer says, you're going to see me, as opposed to HR would like to see you. I think we're going to take that a little more seriously. In our pre-show discussions, we figured that you and I are probably about the same age. And I sometimes will make a couple of jokes at the expense of our millennial friends and some Gen Y guys. For full disclosure, I am Generation X. But you have been there for a significant technological evolution, not just of the Marine Corps, but of the military in general, worldwide. Can you spot a point where you saw the Marine Corps make a specific decision to look at cybersecurity and treat it as something beyond just a necessary evil, just one more thing we have to do? Was there a change in attitude towards cybersecurity?
Yes, actually. Well, interesting, and I guess I'll walk that back even maybe a little further and say that when I first came into the Marine Corps, there were separate occupational fields for data systems separate from communications. Shortly after I came on board, they merged the schooling for that, and so then it became communication and information systems. That's how it remained for most of my career. And then toward the tail end of my career, there was talk, or rather, information assurance became kind of a field unto its own, or at least there were some specialty, we call them MOSs, military occupational specialties, that were information assurance. So then really, I'm going to say in the last 5, 6, maybe 8 years, that has gone from these are things you need to do and these are policies you need to comply with to we are going to come down and inspect every 2 or 3 years with a very fine-tooth comb, and it will be any shortcomings will be reported not only to your commanding officer, but to his commanding officer, his or her commanding officer, and up about very high level visibility for units that were not toeing the line when it came to cybersecurity. So that's one part of my answer. Just in the last year or so, a little over a year, the Marine Corps has created a new occupational field specifically for cyber, both defense and other actions as well. But that is really part of a larger effort where the Marine Corps made a strategic decision to say we are going to focus more and put more of our personnel, more of our Marines into information. The Marine Corps uses the term information. The Navy and other services call it information warfare. The Marine Corps, in my view, opened the aperture there and said, we're not just talking about information warfare. We're talking about things even like public affairs, civil affairs, the things that we do that communicate our message, not always necessarily trying to protect it or otherwise influence an audience. It's simply all the things relating to information, and the Marine Corps has paid a great deal of attention to that here in the last couple of years, including with I keep saying our and we. Retired Marine now, but once Marine, always a Marine. I still closely identify with the Marine Corps, and I'll say that the Marine Corps' concepts still have continued to shift in focus toward information. Information is the fight of the future. Quite frankly, it's today's fight, and it's the fight going into the future. And that for the Marine Corps to make that decision, cyber tracks along right in there with that. But I say all that just to point out that cyber is really but one aspect of that entire information fight.
Again, mind blown trying to figure out which question I want to ask next and make sure that we have enough time to answer all of the questions that I want to ask. What was the integration process like as you've seen this unfold over the last several years? Marines are all over the world. I dare say all 7 continents. Are there Marines on Antarctica?
I don't think so, but it'd be good to check that, but not to my knowledge.
Oh, there's got to be. Like you said, once a Marine, always a Marine. There's got to be somebody down there.
I would love to get there. In fact, that's a bucket list item for me, is getting down to Antarctica. And my 10-year-old daughter says she wants to come with me, so we need to figure out how to make it happen.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it sounds like the kids that you have made so far sound to be pretty impressive. So yeah, something tells me if she says she wants to go, she may end up there. When you're looking at rolling these things out, you've got established systems, you've got budgets that are unfortunately extremely limited. How do you make that case where you're trying to say, look, man, we're dealing with cyber attacks coming at us from every angle 24 hours a day, and someone else is saying we need more troops, we need more transports, we need more weapons, we need more planes? How do you make sure that they understand the process, that the cyber front is every bit as important as the physical fronts and the dangers that we face physically? When you're talking about access to information, it's any type of information, and you can cripple a nation like that if you don't do the right thing the right way.
Yeah, and no, Matt, I think you just you just named a selling point right there. I mean, it's explaining those types of things, and again to plug CSFI and our training. I think it's that IQUAD course. It's the things that the cyber operators can bring to the table when they tell the commander in his or her war plan, here's the cyber aspects of your plan, and this is why it matters. This is why it's important. Yes, there's a kinetic fight going on, and yes, we need to protect people physically, but much of their physical well-being may very well rest on a SCADA system, a industrial control system, or something that has a direct cyber vulnerability if it's not defended against. The second thing I'll say there is that my observation, and I just what I saw was leadership gets it. That probably wasn't the case 10 years ago. Both, again, talking about what I said earlier about it's no longer the CISO or the CIO, it's the CEO. So I'm going to say same thing in the military. These days, the general officers that I would talk to and brief on topics about cyber and IT, they were top of mind, and I would say in their top 3, top 5 items that they wanted to make sure were addressed and taken care of. So I think these days everybody gets it, and that's, to me, that's a reason why you saw information come to the forefront.
Because it's my job as the cheesy host to keep doing these types of plugs. CSFI is the Cybersecurity Forum Initiative. You can find them online at csfi.us, and on Twitter it is CSFI_DCOE. There's a lot of really important, great information there, including how to volunteer. So if you are interested in making sure that there is the types of trainings that we need for all of our organizations, both military and private sector, CSFI is a great place to get started. And I'm going to keep doing that throughout, so get used to it. I'm just going to keep plugging this because this is one of the really interesting organizations that we've gotten to work with. I'm really curious about the evolution of not just cybersecurity, but IT in general, as you said, about information within the Marine Corps and the military. You've seen a lot over your tenure, and there are literally thousands of Marines in your time that have come in. There's new generations graduating practically every week. As we have seen the transition from baby boomers to Generation X to millennials and now Generation Y coming in, this is the social media generation. They have grown up online. They've grown up telling people everything about themselves. Has that changed the approach from the military side? Has it changed the philosophy towards security and privacy? Or is that something that has to be sacrosanct and you've got to kind of, I don't want to use the term beat it out of, but you've got to make sure people understand this ain't the Instagram generation. Once you walk on, Camp Lejeune or somewhere, it's different.
Yes, it is different. It takes, I think, continual reinforcement. I think, again, the training device that you mentioned, the tracker, the fitness tracker, and the ability for, that to just be tracked by anybody on a website. The vulnerability there is just one example, but no, it's folks, again, particularly the newer generations, the digital natives, they just, I think they understand security, and I think they understand privacy as concepts, but I think they kind of don't care, or in their mind, their risk decision is in favor of putting the information out there, whatever it is, looking cool or letting people know what I'm up to, or putting a shout out to my friends, more important than maybe protecting where they are, or where they're going tomorrow, or where they're going to be this weekend. They've consciously or unconsciously made that decision in their mind, and they've opted for openness versus being closed. And here's another thing I'll throw in, just because I like it, but it was a huge eye opener to me. Was I was at a conference a few years ago, and the gentleman talking, it was around the time of the dust up over the NSA wiretaps.
Mm-hmm.
And folks were really up in arms about, well, holy cow, what information does the government have on me? And are my phone conversations being tapped? And am I being listened to? Are they looking at my email? And this gentleman's comment was, the information that the NSA has, or that the U.S. government has, pales in comparison to what the digerati have. To him, he's talking about the large providers on the internet. That was an eye opener for me to hear that, because as you talk about my background, I mean, as a quote unquote government guy the whole way, holy cow, I go through a process to get to be vetted, basically. Can I be trusted? And so of course I trust the government. I don't trust the industrial big guys out there, but I think I'm in the minority there. I think the rest of the world, they have no problem putting their stuff out there on, pick your commercial provider webmail, but God forbid it fall into the hands of the government. And that was just such a total 180 paradigm shift for me when I heard him say that. I think that's maybe a lot of what the attitude is too. Is I don't care if it's out there in the public, but when I talk about security or privacy, rather, I just don't want the government having it. And people, I think, maybe are discounting the aggregation of information that industry has on all of us, and even whether it's data, metadata, whatever it is. Over the weekend, I happened to see Ready Player One, probably one of the last people to see it, but.
Yeah, come on, man. That's our entire childhood boiled down to 1 2-hour movie.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm thinking about the scene where, he says his first name in the oasis, in the environment, in the cyber environment, and you're never supposed to say your real name in the environment. They all have a handle that they go by when they're playing the game. And as soon as he says his first name, they are able to go and find exactly who he is. Not just that his name's Wade, but they find out, Wade and his last name. They find out where he lives, who his family is, and he is immediately a target. I think that type of thing is practically possible today. Frankly, I think it is possible today. My wife tells me I'm paranoid, but maybe I am. But the capabilities exist, and they're growing. They're growing in the capability is becoming more robust every day, and it's becoming more available, and they're cheaper and more available to just about anybody. I think there's a tendency to just kind of play with the cool toys and not think about the digital exhaust that we're putting off when we do it.
Well, the question isn't, are you paranoid? It's, are you paranoid enough? No, I think it's ironic when you're comparing, the big corporations with the government is like, well, I don't want them having my information. I think the NSA is probably not going to sell all of my metadata to a yogurt manufacturer to make sure I get targeted ads on Facebook. So yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't even thought of, like, who would I rather actually have all of my information? We'll get to that one later. That's another podcast for another time.
Yeah.
Interesting point when you were talking about the people with regard to social media, and they just may want to give a shout out to their friends or show that they're doing something cool. That's a really fine line to walk, because you do want that arm of your personnel saying, this is awesome. I love this. I love my brothers and sisters, what I'm doing. I'm getting so much out of this. And you want to broadcast that feeling. What kind of challenges is the military facing right now with regard to a cybersecurity workforce? Because, not to be offensive to either our friends in the military or in the hacker community, are those really personality types that mesh? So when it comes to recruiting and developing and retaining this talent, what have you been going through over the last few years? Within your time as a director of IT, even before that, what do you guys look at and say, this is the people that we need? You give me a talented person, we'll make him or her a Marine.
That is absolutely doable. And my experience was, and honestly, during my entire career, I mentioned when the data systems and the communication fields merged, from back to those days, I think I continually heard senior leaders, Marines, senior ranking Marines, kind of shaking their heads and saying, "Oh, this is great. We get these Marines that we train in IT, and we teach them this great skill set. They know Microsoft, they're a CCNA or they're an MCSE. And then 4 years go by and they go out and they want to make six figures, and we can't retain them." But, somehow over 24 years of my experience, we managed to keep our networks running, and we managed to keep, Marines in critical jobs to keep that stuff moving along. And honestly, I saw a number of very talented Marines doing those things throughout. And so my answer is not to lose sleep over it, because one of the things that happens is, sure, we do experience a good amount of turnover. Maybe the Marine Corps experience is unique from the Army or Navy. Not unique, but it could be a little more nuanced, because the Marine Corps, first of all, is the youngest of all the services, and the Marine Corps by design is made up primarily of what we call first termers. They do their first enlistment for maybe 5-6 years, and then they move on back into society. And Victor Krulak, General Krulak, talked about in his book First to Fight how that's one of the main missions of the Marine Corps, is to take young men and women and make them into adults, and then make them contributing members of society. And so, by design, the Marine Corps is a very young force. That'd be my point there. And so we have to expect that many of them are going to attrite. They're going to move on and go back into to the civilian sector. But the ones that stay in the Marine Corps because they want to be Marines. And there's just, and of course, not that I'm biased, but there's just something special about the Marine Corps. And there is an esprit de corps and a camaraderie that just is found nowhere else on earth. And so there are a certain number of those young men and women that they just want to be Marines. And so they're going to forego the big paychecks that industry's dangling in front of them because they want to stay in marine green and do their thing. And I mean, even just this year, I've had the opportunity to continue working with Marines and seeing some of them continuing to press on. And I mean, wow, just some amazing professionals who know their stuff inside out, backward and forward. And you know, and what you find too is that a lot of them, some of the best, they just do the stuff because they like to do it. They set up a network in their basement. You know, they go buy old computers off of eBay or whatever and just set up a network in their basement so they can play with Windows configurations and they can mess around with the settings and understand better what does it take? How can I optimize my network? How can I maximize the throughput on this soda straw transmission link I'm trying to send data over? So, you know, you get those types of men and women who they're not doing it for the paycheck. They're doing it just because they love it. Both they love the IT and the server aspect, but they also love being a Marine. And so we're never going to have that. We're never going to have a problem with those folks. And I think there will always be enough of those folks to give the Marine Corps what it needs.
Hearing that response, if anyone ever doubted the phrase "once a Marine, always a Marine," just rewind it and listen to that response again and tell me that you don't believe a word of it. As far as the Marines doing something right, this was and it's not trivia. I hate that word. Here's a fact for you right now, and this is in no slight on any other of the branches of the armed forces. The combined Army Reserve, and National Guard is over 1 million uniformed members. The Marine Corps and its reserve component, about 220,000. Yet, right now, retired or uniformed Marine holds the seats of Secretary of Defense, White House Chief of Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Head of Africa Command, and the incoming United States Central Command. A fifth the size of the Army, half the size of the Navy, about 2/3 the size of the Air Force. Yet somehow, these are the people that are sitting at the top to make sure that the decisions that they are making are the ones that are getting it done correctly. So yes, I think you hit it on the head, Pete. The Marines are doing something right. Wait a minute, what were we talking about again? Yeah, there was some cybersecurity in here at some point. Let's go a little more directly into, let's get into the ones and zeros. When we were talking ahead of time, one thing that you said, your approach to cybersecurity is to keep it simple. So given the posts that you've seen throughout your career, is that born of necessity or from experience?
I think it's both, really. I think as things continue as technology continues to proliferate, there's just more of it out there. There's more to know and more to be aware of every day. Therefore, more attack surfaces, more vulnerabilities every day. So that to me is the necessity side of it. That you have to boil it down to what are kind of some of the basic steps I can take to keep myself maybe not even fully protected, but at least shut the front door and make him come in the side window or the cellar door or something. You know, don't make yourself a soft target. At least make yourself a hard target, and do some of the things to protect your systems. But then, you know, as well, just through experience. I was talking a minute ago about the fine professionals that Marines are. At the same time, as you said, there's not that many of us, and you know, for that matter, you know, there are others that maybe don't have the MCSE or CCNA, CISSP level of knowledge. They're an entry level, probably, you know, on their first tour, maybe in their first year in the Marine Corps still. So, you know, not every Marine, and for that matter, again, as I said toward the outset, you know, the Marine Corps is a warfighting organization. It's not an IT organization. Those rank and file, or I'll say non-communicators who are going and putting our ordnance on target, they're maintaining aircraft, they're driving trucks, doing all the other things that Marines do. They can't possibly, you know, be expected to do all the technical pieces that it takes to keep an end user device secure. So it has to boil down to, you know, what are the simple steps to take, strong passwords, or, you know, frankly, Marines don't even use passwords because we have other methods that Marine Corps secures its network and other methods. Don't only, you know, use a password on your email, but use a password on your lock screen and you know, lock down every layer of your system. pay attention to your surroundings. So, okay, great. So I've got a screen lock on my computer, but when I'm working on my computer, who's surfing over my shoulder looking at, what I'm looking at? Kind of a long answer there to just say that, it just has to be a pragmatic approach, because there's just too much out there to try and plug every hole in the dike.
Well, and it seems like you're talking about some, I don't want to call it simple, but some elemental things about cyber hygiene. And that's an industry buzzword that it's kind of flashy right now. And it seems simple, but it's really not. I mean, you're talking about all of these things you've got enabled on your machine, but if you're on an airplane or you're sitting down at a Starbucks for a cup of coffee or somewhere, and how do you keep your head on a swivel the entire time? I mean, when OPSEC is just as important as cybersecurity and information security, is it that simple? I mean, what kind of steps can we take, knowing that you've seen what you've seen both in deployment, but also now that you are in the private sector? How can we as civilians make sure that we are protecting the network, but when our people are in the field are protecting that from that endpoint? Because like you said, you don't know who's surfing over your shoulder. That's the easiest way in.
To me, it's those things of being aware of my surroundings, thinking about, do I need to do this particular task right now in this place? I don't check my bank accounts while I'm sitting at Starbucks.
Right. For some reason, we all have to do that right when we sit down to get a cup of coffee. You're loaded into my stock market account. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Just it take the extra second to just think about what I'm doing before I do it. And you said it, head on a swivel. I mean, I guess I was going to say heads up. Just kind of literally and figuratively. Kind of look around. Again, if I'm riding the metro, okay, maybe I'll check my email, but maybe I won't. Probably not going to do other things that point out, where am I? Where's my family right now? Things like that are going to be things I'm not going to do in a congested environment. At the end of the day, yes, we have these devices. They're extremely powerful. Information at our fingertips, and conversely can save lives in a lot of instances too. Whether it's any pick your emergency incident, where suddenly I need to let my loved ones know where I am, or I want to know where they are. What a fantastic tool for that. And there's even companies that are finding ways to do that better and spread information quickly so that the right people get it to either respond or to clear out or whatever actions need to be taken. Great capabilities that can keep us safe as well. But I think it's an information fight. What I said earlier, the military posture these days, it's kind of very much resonates when I put that in a civilian or kind of just regular everyday context. It's all about information, and don't make it easy for them. I'll just go back to what I said a minute ago. Don't make it easy for them. It's hard. I've got my computer. I've got all my different ways that I connect, whether it's through Wi-Fi or whether it's through my provider or it's a hard line or however it is. At the end of the day, sure, there are people, there's the network administrators, there's cyber defenders somewhere that hopefully are trusted individuals that I can put my trust in. But nonetheless, they have access to that information. So the smarter people I've listened to over the years have said, hey, if you're going to put it on the internet, it's out there. So, okay, it's out there. But hey, if it's that important, then maybe I think twice about putting it out there, or I'm just that much more careful about who I'm allowing to see it. And, than anybody that thinks it's that important that they have to go to, extreme means to hack or do other illegal things to try and get my information. There's only so much I'm going to be able to do about that with all the other challenges and pressures on my time and my world.
And once again, your answer cues up the perfect segue into the next question. You mentioned information and information security. There is a demarcation between cybersecurity and information security, but the layman may not know the difference between the two. When you're talking about information security compared to cybersecurity, what is the difference?
I'm just boiling it down to what's the media or what's the environment? Are we talking about information over a network connection on a computer system, or are we talking about the receipt from, or better example, maybe my medical record, my paper medical record jacket that my doctor has, that's left open on the receptionist's desk while the next patient comes to the window to pay their bill, or whatever that may be. There's no cyber piece to that second example I gave. That's all paper information, printed paper on ink on paper that it's just in plain view for anybody to see, and there's no computer or no technology involved there.
Well, you can't hack a pencil.
Right. So that I mean, just to make it I guess as easy as I can make it, that's it. It's what's the media that it's being transmitted over. I saw another thing years ago, basically pointing out cyber crimes. Well, what are cyber crimes? Well, it's all the same things that have been happening for hundreds of years. It's just being done with a computer now. Whether it's stealing people's money or it's trying to do anything else illegal, any other illegal activity online. I'm thinking about exploiting children or others. All those things now take place in the cyber domain, but they've taken place for centuries without a cyber domain. So that's really the only difference.
Well, and if I'm going to rob a bank, I'd much rather do it online over the internet from the other side of the country, because I'm much less likely to get shot at on my way out of the bank vault.
Yes.
Let's talk about something a little more fun. We're nearing the end here, but can we talk about scouting for a minute? Because you have done something pretty awesome, and your son has as well. And I don't know what the percentage is, but a second-generation Eagle Scout, that's a story to tell. That's where you hire a marching band and you want to shout your name and your son's name to the highest mountaintops. But can we dig into that for a little bit? I mean, in addition to being Eagle Scout, you volunteered with them for several years. What's happened on the scouting side? This is an organization that has traditionally really been on the forefront of a lot of interesting cultural things, obviously in the United States. Are they doing anything specifically with regard to cybersecurity or IT programs?
Yes. First of all, every scout needs to, in his rank progression, needs to earn what's called the cyber chip. It's a youth protection program primarily that's meant to just educate the scouts about, how do you keep yourself safe online, along the lines of what we were just talking about. Make sure your parents know what you're doing. Make sure you're not talking to strangers. Particularly, beware of chat rooms or other things like that, and just keeping oneself safe online, and also not bullying others or misusing the internet. So that's the cyber chip. But then from there's a computer's merit badge. A few years ago, the Scouts started a program called they called it a STEM program, but the highest award there is called the NOVA Award. And I'm not sure if there's an acronym behind that or not, but the bottom line is it's almost a separate track from Boy Scouting or Venture Crew or Varsity Scouts. I think it could be either, where teens or young people can join simply to do the STEM program without any rank progression or anything other than just working on that NOVA Award in STEM, or registered scouts or registered varsity scouts or venture crew members can go and participate in the STEM program as well. So it's pretty all encompassing and yes, squarely focused on STEM. I'll also point out that the camp that my son works at, by the way, his summers are spent working at scout camp, and his camp happens to have what they call a tech center. And they've got computers in there. That's where they teach astronomy merit badge, aviation, space exploration, and some other things that are related to STEM there. So yeah, certainly there's strong STEM focus in his world, his scouting world. But yes, on the whole, scouting definitely has put a good spotlight on STEM.
And for more information on that, make sure you check out it's scouting.org/STEM-NOVA-awards, and it'll dig super deep into this. There's all kinds of alphabet soup I can give you for after scouting.org, but start there and dig in, because it tells you all kinds of interesting stuff about what's going on with that program, which is pretty amazing. So one last question, and this is one that we always want to hit our guests with, because we are super curious given the Well, and for you, I can actually say this, given the battles that you fought, both physically, metaphorically, and in the cyber world, when we look at malware attacks, ransom attacks, anything where a threat actor is coming at you, is prevention possible? And the analogy I like to use is, I can tell you that I'm 39-1. I've won 39 out of 40 fights, but man, did I get punched in the face a lot. But the record I can't give you is the fights that I didn't get in because I prevented them from happening. Can we do that as an information technology society?
My straight answer is no. But I'm going to actually hedge that, and I'm going to say that to a large extent, I think we can prevent, but I just don't think there's a 100% solution. And I alluded to it earlier. If information is on the internet, it's out there. And yes, there are enclaves or domains or private networks that we want to lock down and actually, no kidding, keep anybody else out. And I think we have a lot of good tools and techniques for those things today. I think with the right focus, the right expertise, and the right tools, I think a lot of things can be prevented. But at the end of the day, to me, I'll say what I said a minute ago. At least lock your front door and lock all your doors, and don't let anybody come in the front door. If they're going to get my stuff, I at least want them to have to go to great lengths to get it. As a hard target, it's that much less likely when there's probably dozens of soft targets around me. Maybe a selfish viewpoint, but again, it's that risk decision and what is my most important information, and then what's maybe not quite as important, and what can I afford to risk and how much. Again, short answer, we'll never do it 100%.
No, but I love that last little tidbit, and make sure that you hear what he said. What can I afford to risk? We've talked a lot about risk with several of the guests of the podcast, a lot of the video content that we've done. We have not talked about what can I afford to risk? What is an acceptable loss? And on that cryptic note, now we're going to shift over to the fun stuff. Shameless plug time. Now, you are a Marine and a cybersecurity professional, so I think it's safe to assume you're not going to be giving us your Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff.
No. In fact, I keep I think a relatively low profile on that stuff. I do one more time want to highlight and brag about CSFI. Fantastic organization. I've been involved for just about 2 years now. And I wish I had known about them earlier, because I really think we do meaningful work that, as a nonprofit, I love that it really is not about the bottom line. It's about helping America be a stronger America in the cyber domain. We do everything we can to try and support the warfighter, both again with specifics like the training, but also I'm privileged to be surrounded by some giants on our advisory board. Great folks that again at the end of the day, service is at their heart, and it's service to our nation and service to our warfighters and those in our government that are trying to protect our freedom. And on that note, the other thing that I want to point out is I have a friend, Scott Cooper, who is both a fellow Naval Academy grad and a fellow retired Marine officer. He's involved with something called Vets for American Ideals. And, I'll just paraphrase, but in my own words, what they're all about is that as veterans, once we hang up the uniform, our service doesn't stop. And, that I just think that's something that certainly resonates with me. And what they do is, again, have a very good web presence. And if you sign up with them, you'll get notifications of different opportunities to volunteer, to get involved, and both in supporting other vets as well as just kind of supporting those who support America. And again, the name I think implies a lot there, but just American ideals. And I think number one on that, from my perspective, is service, service to the nation, service to others. So VFAI.org, Vets for American Ideals. I'd encourage everybody to go and check them out as well.
you all have some homework, because this has been, I think, maybe the best episode we've done, and we've told you about a lot of places you need to go. Again, we cannot hit this point hard enough. The job that they are doing at CSFI, it is something you need to be paying attention to. The website is csfi.us. On Twitter, it is at CSFI_DCOE. Lots of really interesting things going on, things you can get involved with and be a part of. And hey, let's throw it back out to the scouts again, man. It's scouting.org. Once you're on that site, look up STEM, look up NOVA, all kinds of good information. Who knows? You might even see a picture of Pete's son working in the data center while he's at camp. And I say camp like we think that's something fun. No, he's out there killing himself all summer, because that's what Eagle Scouts do. Pete, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I feel like we could go on and on about this kind of stuff. You have a life to get back to. You have security issues to take care of, and apparently some pretty awesome kids. So I'm going to let you go do those things. As for everybody else, thank you for tuning into Insecurity. As always, you can find us on threatvector.silence.com. That is the home of the podcast, videos, blogs, and technical white papers. Also, our newest little brother, not little brother, but our newest brother, Dirty Security. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Your host is Edward Preston. With us, you can also find us on LinkedIn and Facebook. On Twitter, we are at Silence Inc. and at Silence Insider. And for the podcast, look for us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. All we ask is that you subscribe, rate, and review. My name is Matt Stevenson. Look for me out there on the Twitter at PacMatt73. Thanks for coming around.